Hi, everyone. It's Joe Veneri, the host of Fitt Insider, the show where I talk with the entrepreneurs, executives, and investors who are redefining the business of fitness and wellness. Today, I'm joined by Helaine Knapp, CEO of CITYROW. In this episode, we discuss the company's origin as a single boutique fitness studio, the decision to launch a connected rower and digital app, plus Helaine's plan to scale an omnichannel experience. Before today's episode, I wanted to share some updates to the Fitt Insider platform. As you might know, in addition to this podcast, we send a weekly newsletter to help operators stay informed and make better decisions. We also launched an industry-specific jobs board filled with hundreds of openings at top companies, and we're actively investing in early-stage health and fitness startups. To see what's new or to get in touch, visit insider.fit.co. Helaine, welcome to Fitt Insider. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Joe. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, likewise. Glad that we could get you on and excited to chat. To kick things off, for those who don't know, maybe just introduce yourself and tell us about CITYROW.
Thank you. Helaine Knapp, founder and CEO. Been at this for a couple of years, bringing rowing to the masses in a true omnichannel way. So started as a brick and mortar business back in 2014, full side hustle from my tech startup days, and then quickly grew into a digital at-home fitness company, selling both rowers and content. And today, we sit with 9 studios open nationwide, a lot more franchises sold, and a really, really fast growing at-home consumer base. So that's who we are. I'm excited to talk.
Yeah, there's, I think, so much there maybe to dig into. And at first, let's start with, you mentioned 2014, getting into the brick and mortar side of the studios, focusing obviously on rowing. At that time, you had boutique studios blowing up and all the different concepts taking off. I believe, the first couple studios were in New York. How did the original vision differ from what the company has kind of grown into? Obviously, it's evolved a little bit, and you mentioned some of those components, but did you go into it knowing, hey, we want to do at home, we want to do digital, or was it like, hey, let's start the rowing studio and scale this concept up?
I'm going to take a half a step back, Joe, and I'm going to tell you, I didn't even want to open a rowing studio. Rowing was not even the goal here. I had personally fallen in love with boutique fitness as a exec in SaaS startups. So I was a client services exec, I was an account manager, and I was running 1 million miles a minute. So as someone who had been on a health and wellness journey after college, I found myself at a point in my life where the only way I was working out was if I booked these classes. So Joe, I'm a basic bitch consumer is really who I am at the core here. And unfortunately, after doing this stuff for a couple of years, I found myself with a lower back injury that, there was no injury, there was no accident, there was no one thing that happened, but I was told that I needed to have a low impact workout and I needed to be more intentional about my movement. So here I was thinking that I was crushing these classes 4 or 5, 10 days a week. And I found myself having to have back surgery at 25 because I wasn't being smart about my movement. And so that's what actually forced me to actually think about, is there a way to get the results we're looking for today, but with more? But with intentionality around how we move our bodies. And hey, maybe we should do some mobility work. I've been sitting at a desk for 10 hours. Like maybe we should open up our hips before I start box jumping, which was, what we did on Tuesdays, Joe. So that was really the idea behind CITYROW. Was not about rowing. It was about creating a smart workout. And when I learned how good rowing was for you, this thing torches calories, works 85% of your muscles, and it's this low impact thing that I need. Okay, you know what? It's actually kind of boring. I don't want to row for an hour. That sounds horrible. But as I dug a little deeper and talked to some professionals, I was like, this thing is actually perfect for a HIIT workout. It's a deadlift. I don't want to row for more than a couple of minutes, a couple hundred meters. That's horrific. But paired with personal training style movement, lifting weights, using body weight movements, it's perfect. And so frankly, when I launched this business, I had a full-time job. I put very little dollars into it. And I was like, let's see if this product works. We didn't launch with any marketing. So there was no big vision on what this thing would be, except that I had a feeling that there was a hole in the market for something that was smart first and sexy and cool as well. And so once it started to take off and I finally quit my job and brought the team together, this was a time where we were like, okay, I remember an investor asking me, hey, are you going to franchise the business? And I thought to myself, I don't know anything about franchising. At this point, I can think of Subway and McDonald's, not my very sexy boutique fitness studio in Union Square. But I knew we were going to grow and be big. And it was important for me to then just have my finger on the pulse of what was happening in the space. So we opened a couple of studios in New York, as you know, but it took a while for us to just continue to think about what the best way to evolve was through listening to consumers.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit. You have this boutique studio concept. You're, making a transition from tech startups into the fitness scene. Now you're thinking about, I have to learn how to franchise and grow this thing. What was that learning curve like? And when you did start to have investors asking you about franchising the business, was it, their decision to be made, hey, are we going to keep these wholly owned? Like you've seen a SoulCycle do, right? Where they're like, we want to protect the brand. We want to protect the experience. We're not going to franchise it. Now making the decision to do that, what was that experience like?
It was a journey. It started in, I would say 2016 or 2015 after we had a couple of studios open in New York and realizing what it was going to take for us to raise capital to open another dozen studios. And there was a moment, I remember exactly where I was sitting with my co-founder in our tiny closet office. It wasn't an office, it was a closet, but startup days. Thinking to myself, okay, we have an LOI out for a space in Boston. How on earth am I going to incentivize a general manager to want to wake up at 5:30 in the morning and magic eraser the wall, which is one of my favorite activities to do when like Al Roker is going to come in or someone important. I just didn't know how to build that intrinsic motivation in somebody that wasn't me. And so I was like, you know what? People have been asking us for years to franchise the space. I had a green folder in my Gmail called franchising. And I never responded to anyone, but I thought it was interesting. So I just filed it away and I'm an inbox zero kind of gal. So I opened the folder and started to respond to a few people just to learn a little bit. In there were a couple of franchise development companies. So met with them, learned a little more, was kind of turned off by some of the people that I met. But the more people I met, the more intrigued I was about the notion of really enabling people to build a career in something that they love. I love that I get to wear leggings every day. Fancy leggings, Joe. Fancy leggings. We can talk about that in another podcast. But I thought it was really cool to think about not just allowing people that opportunity, but also to expand our footprint really quickly. We're the name in rowing for fitness, and we'd be able to grow really quickly and really capital efficient. So it was a journey, and it was ultimately when we met our franchising partner, a company called Franworth, based out of Ann Arbor, that I felt really good vibes in my gut. And that's what got me to jump in, because it's the notion of, I knew that I wasn't an expert in franchising. It's not what you don't know that's scary. It's what you don't know. So this wasn't something we could jump into by hiring one or two consultants. This was a very, very, very big deal. So we needed a partner that was in it with us, with skin in the game, that were ninjas in the space. And so that's what it took for me to jump into franchising.
Yeah, and there really are folks that not only specialize in this beyond consulting, but they operationalize the franchises and scale them now internationally, as we've seen with, obviously there's Exponential, which is like a holding company of boutique fitness brands, but certainly they've worked with other franchise partners that then sign these master agreements and roll out. They're rolling out now in Saudi Arabia and Australia and, all over the world. I wanted to ask this maybe later on, but it kind of fits in nicely here. When you think about the boutique fitness brands, obviously rowing now has become one of those concepts that's been successful. And speaking of Exponential, they acquired one in Row House. We've seen companies like F45, Exponential, Lifetime go public recently. That M&A that's happening in the space, the consolidation that are continuing to franchise them, companies launching multiple concepts, even like an F45 getting into Pilates with an FS8 concept. Do you see CITYROW being a standalone brand with its kind of own umbrella of other brands, maybe potentially working with or being acquired by a larger holding company? How do you see that playing out as both the dynamics in at home and in person continue to shift?
Great question. I see us with a pretty aggressive roadmap ahead of us, not about, I would say, building a, umbrella within a certain area of the company or of the category, right? So we have boutique fitness is booming like crazy. We're just continuing to take market share away from the big box gyms, which I love to see. We'll continue to see that because more and more people are moving through what I like to call your fitness maturity curve. So at the top of it, you have like, I'm going to start walking twice a week. And then it's like, you know what? Maybe I'll go to Planet Fitness and I'll hit the elliptical for 30 minutes, right? And at some point, you're going to graduate, we hope. As you start to feel good, as you start to plateau. That's why people change around their fitness all the time. And that's where boutique fitness has really entered the marketplace, is where there's more education, there's more accountability, there's more community, sucks you in for more days, and it makes it more fun. As you continue to grow through that fitness maturity, that's where digital fitness really comes into play, is when you want to take a big bite and bet on yourself and bet on being able to work out those days like 5, 6, and 7 potentially at home. And so for us, I'm less interested right now, today for CITYROW, in adding to the middle of the funnel, because we're already playing there in an aggressive way. For me, it's about how do we continue to capture people for a longer life cycle. And so for us, that means being truly omnichannel and meeting them in the middle in these boutique fitness spaces across the country and growing with them into an at-home experience. And so for us, we've made a really big leap into delivering CITYROW both in studios and at home in a very rich and meaningful way. And so that is a huge lift, and we're going to continue to meet the customer where they are in both of those modalities.
Yeah, I think it's a great answer and makes a lot of sense. Kind of circling back now to where we were from the brick and mortar studio side to the digital that you mentioned, building this omni-channel experience. I think it was 2018 that you started getting into the at-home digital side, launching the CITYROW Go, now kind of scaling up that content. You mentioned offline that opening the production studio, now with the equipment with Water Rower, continuing to scale the hardware side. That was obviously pre-pandemic. Everybody's talking about the connected fitness space. We're seeing the kind of boom during lockdowns when gyms were closed. Now, where that market is headed, we'll figure that out in the months and years ahead. But just talk about that initial decision to get into the digital at-home side and how obviously that business has kind of been impacted by the pandemic.
What a journey, Joe. It started in actually 2016. There were 2 moments that I remember very vividly. One was people started to talk about Peloton, and I saw an early article on their numbers and the traction. And personally, as a consumer, I thought it was cool. Taking a step back and just like the hat that I wear as a CEO of this company is I'm a consumer. I'm not a fitness professional. I did not come from the finance world. I am the first basic person through the door. And so that is oftentimes a barometer for us as a company, whether it's me or some of our clients, to say, does this work? Does this fit with who we're trying to go after? And I thought that it was fascinating because here I was hustling like a crazy lunatic around New York City, trying to build a business, trying to be an executive. And I was struggling to get to the gym more than 3 or 4 days a week. And I'm a fitness mogul. So it's really fascinating for me as a consumer to watch this trend of people being able to capture those extra days of the week in less time, because time is our most valuable currency. At the same time, I watched 2 really good friends of mine have a kid and move to the suburbs. And it would be regular texts that I get from them saying, I really miss coming to Annie's 6:30 on Tuesday. I miss everyone. Like, I need to get back in shape. And I thought to myself, that plus the trends we're seeing, the macro trends in this space, which are not the conversation on the Today Show 20 years ago of Jane Fonda and Richard Simmons of, hey, exercise. Is it a fad or is it here to stay? We quickly answer that question. It is actually here to stay for every reason. Every reason exercise is here to stay. So how do we get not just more days in the week, but we're going to start younger in life and we're not going to stop. There are no excuses for the dad bod anymore, Joe. And so with that, I saw this big opportunity to capture people that couldn't leave their home. Is it the gold standard? No. An in-person epic boutique fitness class is the gold standard, but not everyone can have the gold standard 7 days a week. And so I thought to myself, you know what? One, I love technology. That's where I built my career. I'm actually way more comfortable talking about digital and technology and a monthly subscription, revenue than I am talking about how to run a four-wall business just based on my personal experience. So I thought that we were pretty well disposed from that perspective to get into it. Secondly, I knew the workout you can get on the rower and the mat in 20 or 30 minutes was going to not just be highly effective, probably more so than 60 minutes on a bike, but it could also stand up in the corner of the room and take up 1 square foot. So those are the factors that got me to bet really early in the at-home space. And we took our seed capital from a manufacturer to go big in that early, but to also launch in a smart way to take learnings over time. And so that's why we were really, really, really ready to go when the pandemic hit. But your second question was, where is this going? Still really early days. And I think that that's what's so fun and cool about our space is that we're just getting started. And so I'm very excited to see how this continues to play out.
Yeah, with that, how many, I think you mentioned it, but how many studios are there now? And then I guess, how many do you aspire to grow to? And then I'll struggle back to the digital piece in that.
We opened 7 studios in the 6 months before the pandemic hit us. So we have 9 studios open today. We will have hundreds of locations in the next 2 years. But it's also important to just match the energy of the industry. So we took a pause on opening them in the past year. We'll start to kick that back off in early next year.
And so then focusing over the pandemic and more recently, I think, was it a $12 million funding round that you recently raised?
Yep.
And so taking that, accelerating digital, keeping up with this shift, you mentioned it there that just how effective rowing is. And I think until recently, I don't want to put a date on it, but until more recently, rowing was flying under the radar. You had people who had rowed crew that knew about it and they knew their ergometer. Most people don't even know that it's called an ergometer. But then CrossFit started to bring Concept 2 into the mainstream, and more there were the studios and then connected equipment, of course. But now it seems to be heating up with competition both in the brick and mortar side, whether it's rowing only studios or studios that utilize rowers, and certainly in the at-home space. How do you think about recognizing, like you said, it's still the early days. We'll see how the shift to at-home and omnichannel plays out, but separating CITYROW from the competition as more and more people catch on to just how effective rowing can be.
I am so happy not to have to answer the question anymore of how big is this rowing thing, or it's so niche. That was my first 4 years of this business, was trying to explain to people that it wasn't about the sport of rowing. Now, there are people in the space doing quite well that are piggybacking on the sport of rowing, and that only helps further prove our point because we go after the general fitness population. Orange Theory has done wonders for us, educating people, introducing them to rowing a little bit, right? Sometimes they don't fully get it because that's not a focus for them, but it was their appetite a little bit for what this thing could be. And then for me, it's a rising tide really does lift all ships. We know very, very clearly where we sit in the marketplace. We're not here for rowing for sport. I've never rowed on the water a day in my whole life. We talked about doing it as a team, but I just think we might be not great at it. And also, we're kind of busy, but we're not a video game. We are here to educate people as to why this is something you should use as a vehicle for smart movement. We happen to use the rower, just like Elon is trying to drive down carbon emissions by, the electric vehicle. We are here to help people move better, and we use the rower as part of that. And that's why they stick around. And so for us, it's about staying true to who we are as a brand, which is not first and foremost a rowing company. It's a smart fitness company. We happen to use the rower. And so anyone who's trying to educate people as to why rowing is great for you really helps our cause. So I hope they continue to spend more money on media.
Yeah, I think we'll continue to see that. There's no shortage of companies who are, launching at-home rowing or rumored to be entering the space. You mentioned something there, actually a couple things that I wanted to touch on. you're not a gaming company, not doing on the water rowing. There are obviously companies like Ergata, like Hydro that kind of lean into those things. But now there's so many other elements of the at-home fitness, connected fitness experience, whether it's some level of interactive content, call it live, or the instructor being able to see you and provide real-time feedback or motion tracking. Certainly licensing music is a huge part of that. Some of these elements beyond the rowing experience, beyond the digital content, how are you thinking about music and interactive and coaching as it relates to, some of these things just becoming table stakes?
Spot on. There's a million things we want to do, but we only have so much capital, so much, human capital and financial capital to get it all done. For us, it was, okay, here's a million things we want to do. What are the 2, 3, right? Focus is how you grow a company that we feel are true to who we are, that will continue to drive engagement and retention and community. And so for us, the number one on that list was live classes, which I'm not sure exactly when this podcast will launch or if the media will be out around it yet, but we are launching live classes 35 to 40 a week on November 15th. In a brand new live production space in New York City, which we're very excited about because it checks off this big bucket that we want to continue to fill, which is community and engagement. So having that two-way interactivity between the community as well as with the instructor is a huge element of who we are as a brand. So that's where we're focusing some of our early efforts this year. There will be more next year, whether it comes, and it all ties back to our why. Smart fitness, helping people move better. You'll see a lot more from us around coaching, around recommendations, around programs, around growth, even if that means sometimes you're taking a yoga class. So that's what you can expect from us. But live classes is going to be huge. We'll be the only live rowing fitness classes.
Very cool. So yeah, definitely something to prioritize and look forward to down the path of the at-home experience. Kind of 2 more things I wanted to touch on. One, the hardware, right? So developed in partnership with Water Rower. They've been in the rowing game for as long as anybody else has, certainly the OGs like Concept 2 and Water Rower. How did that come about? How does that then continue to scale as you look at, do they want to leverage and get into at-home? Are they content doing that through partners like yourself? Just in general, what is that partnership like and how is it working out?
When I had this crazy idea to start a rowing-based fitness concept while I was working for social media tech companies, my biggest barrier was my own personal bias as to what I thought of a rower as. I thought of a Winklevoss twin, right? Or I thought of all of my CrossFit friends, and I could not picture me and my friends on a rower. And in part, that was because I was picturing a Concept 2 machine, which I can also picture in the basement of my grandpa's house growing up. So for me, I knew that some of our biggest opportunities and also challenges was going to be around changing the way people perceive rowing. We're a very image-driven society. We don't need to get into that today, Joe, but you understand that, obviously. And a huge part of how I knew we could do that and change the image of rowing was by changing the machine to start. And I wasn't going to necessarily pull the trigger on this rowing company, but I saw the Water Rower featured in a Details magazine article. And I thought to myself, hey, it's wooden, it's got some water in it, it's beautiful. And it was a piece of furniture that I thought, hey, I kind of want to touch that. Is that the same thing as this metal one that I'm thinking about? And so I immediately hooked onto it. Then I realized how great it was for newbies because the resistance is a lot more balanced out between the whole stroke. And I also knew that we were teaching every single person how to row who walks in our doors. So let's make it as easy as possible. It's also stunning. And so we launched with the Water Rower intentionally and immediately started building a relationship with them. We brought them a lot of press in our first couple of months of existence, right? We're also 3 badass women opening a rowing studio in New York City. So we definitely got their attention. They first built us a custom rower as there started to be copycats from us across the country. They built us a custom black machine. And then when I had the idea to go digitally, I went to them and I said, hey, you got a lot to gain here by partnering with us in a financial capacity. Would you want to be our seed investor in this business? And luckily had built a really strong relationship with them over the years. And they did commit to being that partner for us. So they have been fantastic. Also, the whole notion of know what you're good at, but also know what you're not good at. I am a software, customer facing marketer. I have no experience in hardware. And so why not partner with the company that's pretty close to you up in Rhode Island, who's been doing it for 40 years, that has worldwide distribution? They know their business very well, and I respect them for that. Allows me to open up space to do what we do best. And so I think one of the other secret sauces that we did in developing our Max machine was also partnering with Sweatworks, which is our partner investor behind the Max machine, the tablet. So we knew we wanted to do something really special when it came to that tablet that a random off-the-shelf Android was not going to solve for us. I don't care if it was a lot more expensive. We wanted the sexiest piece of technology on this rower, and Sweatworks enabled us to do that. So it's about partnering with companies that have complementary skill sets to you, just like hiring.
Yeah, super smart. Both Water Rower and Sweatworks, awesome companies. And to your point, seems to be working out in that partnership, continuing to grow. You, in a way, kind of ruled this out, but I did want to ask, because I've had conversations like this both on the podcast and offline about, with a single modality and single piece of equipment, does it make sense to go down the path of offering other pieces of equipment and build out that portfolio? Does it make sense to focus on that singular piece of equipment or modality and then do, like you mentioned, yoga and mat exercises, recommendations, and building out that kind of customer experience centered around one single piece of equipment? Do you have any aspirations to launch other pieces of equipment, or is it going to continue to be focused on the rower?
Question that we talk about a lot internally. When we launched CITYROW Go, it was one class type. It was our 50-minute signature class that directly mirrored what we were doing in studios. Quickly realized that the behavior of the at-home consumer varies quite differently from that in studio. First and foremost, they don't always want a 50-minute class. So launching 20 and 30-minute classes after dabbling with 15 and 40, that's where we landed, was first having a multiple variety of duration of time. We also realized that people have a rower at home, whether they're using the machine they buy directly from us, or, our app connects via Bluetooth to any rower that you might have at home, whether it's another water rower or a Concept 2 machine or a third party. They have a higher appetite for longer distances. So we started to roll out different class types to test and learn. And when you have a digital product, unlike in studio, it's pretty easy to test and learn. So started launching more endurance style classes, more hit the rower, which are more fast, quick paced style classes, more strength focused classes. So our traditional class does leverage dumbbells. We found that people really wanted to lift more. They wanted a 30 or 50-minute just strength class that really matched our consumer behavior. And then we started to make sure that they were doing some recovery work. So we have a class called Kin Stretch, which is really, really functional movement. We are huge fans as executives, and we're always trying to push people to get a little bit smarter and push against some, their barriers of what they're familiar with. And so that plus yoga started to add on some flex classes. So whether it's like a 10-minute upper body, lower body, or stretching classes, pushing them into that, and then creating challenges and programs that kind of make them try it. So, hey, I didn't know that yoga would make my hips feel so great. Those are the types of comments that we get. So we have about 15 different class types now stemming from the one modality. We do sell mats, we do sell weights. I do see us introducing a couple of other complementary pieces of equipment to the rower in the next 12 months.
Yeah, definitely makes sense to continue to. You talked about the kind of consumer life cycle and journey from walking to gyms to studios. It's the same thing when you get at home to, hey, I want to try this class or this modality or this piece of equipment. And the more of those that you can offer, the more you can increase that engagement and relationship with them. So super smart. As we get towards the end of the conversation, wanted to look ahead. We're hopefully now turning the page on, 18, 24 months of pandemic, getting back to some normalcy, some return to regular life as things in the economy starts to reopen. I wanted to get your sense for, with that shift and given all the uncertainty that there was and continues to be, how do you approach making kind of like strategic planning or forecasting going through both the holiday season into the new year, just given that uncertainty?
There's always uncertainty in every business that anybody runs. I think the past year and a half, 2 years has just thrown crazy curveballs at everybody. What we know, and this is not a trend, but we just know that more and more people are going to continue to flock into wellness. It's why we're even on this podcast to begin with, because it's such a hot category and will continue to grow. So I don't think that either of us have any questions around wellness and health and wellness and continuing to be and investing more in our health and wellness. For us, it's about making sure that we put our resources in the right places that are going to allow us to continue to meet the customer where they are. And we know that both boutique fitness and at-home fitness will continue to gain market share. I am very excited for this pandemic to be over so we can start to really enable our consumers, if they've been digital, to come in studio when they're ready. And for our in-studio consumers to dabble in a yoga or a boot camp class at home. I'm very, very, very excited to be able to watch the consumers come back into the gold standard and for us to watch how digital fitness evolves as a result of that. I think that it's going to be really, really, really interesting, but I'm hoping that we don't have another pandemic. If we do, we'll navigate through that because we did with the last one as well. But I'm very bullish on the entire health and wellness category, and particularly boutique fitness and digital. And I would say even more so on omnichannel. So bring it, let's go.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's been on the bright side of all the kind of turmoil that there's been over the last couple of years. Is now consumers are more and more saying we're prioritizing health, focusing on well-being, participating in whether it's at-home fitness or just getting outside in general, being more active. And yeah, this certainly the trend isn't going anywhere as it turns into a full-blown lifestyle for more and more people. So I'm also super stoked on it and can't wait to see how it all plays out. In closing here with that, folks listening to this today, they're excited about CITYROW and what you're building. What's the best way to learn more, get in touch, or just check out the product?
Yeah, you can find us on Instagram. We're just at CITYROW. Our website, cityrow.com. You can find me at Helaine Knapp, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, whatever your modality is. And yeah, really excited for continuing to educate people on a really smart way to move their bodies that's also really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you taking a few minutes to share with our audience what you're working on, and excited to share the conversation.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks everyone for listening to today's episode. For more from Fitt Insider, visit insider.fit.co and subscribe to our weekly newsletter for insights and analysis on the business of fitness and wellness. Then go ahead and subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. See you next time.